Welcome to ND and Me, a podcast to share NDers' lived experiences.
Amanda, please could you introduce yourself to our lovely viewers and listeners?
I can. Hello. My name is Amanda. I live in regional Victoria in Australia. I live on a acre and a quarter with two neurodivergent children and my husband, who's normal. I use rabbit ears for that. I myself am a proud ADHD. I was diagnosed 6.5 years ago. And on our lovely land, I have 7 veggie patches, cows, goats, chickens, the stuff that keeps me sane. At the end of my work day, because I work from home a lot, I'm always out there for an hour or so, just kind of in my zen. Work-wise, I have 20 plus years in change and communications management on big projects. I move around quite a lot. I think the longest I've ever been at a job my entire life has been 2 years. And the nature of that work just suits me really well. And I also have a side gig called Thriving with Neurodiversity, where I raise awareness and acceptance of neurodiversity in the workplace. But I also do some ADHD coaching for recently diagnosed women with ADHD.
Fab.
In a nutshell, that's it.
In a very, very succinct
Random.
nutshell. I wouldn't say random at all. I think that was very well constructed. Constructed makes it sound orchestrated. Very well put together.
Thank you.
So, in the preamble, which you guys don't get to see because we get to hang out for a while.
You're very lucky.
Thrive with neurodiversity, but then you use the word neurodivergent. So what do those two terms mean to you?
Okay, to me. Neurodiversity basically means diverse brains, and every person in the world has a different brain to the person next to them. So everybody fits under the umbrella of neurodiversity, right? Because everyone has different brains. Neurodivergent means your brain is wired differently enough that if you seeked it, you could possibly receive a diagnosis of ADHD or autism or one of the neurodivergent conditions. So neurodiversity is everybody. Neurodivergent is when your brain is different enough that you see, process, and interpret the world differently to the majority of people and normal brains.
Cool. No, that's brilliant. Atif at Diversity and Ability says that we're all neurodiverse, but we're not all marginalized by it.
See, that's
why he's
the choice of words is very interesting,
and we're not. I don't like the term neurodivergent because it means to diverge. I didn't choose to diverge, so I don't want to be known as somebody who's different because of that term of language. No,
I want to be known
neuroatypical. I don't mind because that actually says I'm not typical. But divergent to me sounds like I chose to.
This, it's 20 past 8 at night for me. This is a new terminology. Neuroatypical, I like it. Yeah. But okay, so part of the whole with my change incomes background, to raise awareness first about I want to get to the point where my kids apply for work in 10, 15 years' time. And the places they work at doesn't have a checklist of accommodations for disabled people. It has a checklist of accommodations for everybody, right? So every new employee has this checklist of, yep, I'd love to have noise cancelling headphones, or yep, this, or yep, that, or whatever, right? So the differences, people are aware of the differences. They are aware that actually some of them aren't really that different, and it's become a lot more mainstream. But to get to that point of mainstream, I think you do have to have the awareness and acknowledgement that not everybody is the same. And sometimes labels, smacking people on the head with it, is the best way of doing it. So that's the end goal. The end goal, I think, is more where you maybe.
Well, it's walking towards that inclusion. Is actually having good amount of breaks, having a good amount of exercise, and stuff like standing desks and noise cancelling headphones are good for many, many, many people.
Oh yeah, everything like flexibility. You know, flexible work schedules, and you know, the choice to work where you want.
Have you tried Grammarly when you're in a job that requires you to write anything? Because even if you're not dyslexic, Grammarly can help you.
I use Grammarly. I have now done a few AI courses, and I use ChatGPT. I use all of the stuff that is there to be used. And I've done communications and writing for many years, but I still use all the stuff because it's there, and it makes work a lot easier for a lot of people. Yeah.
And how many times have you gone onto Google and written synonym for word? It's like, I need 8 ways of saying the same word, but I don't want to say the same word 8 times. So
I constantly type in thesaurus. Okay. Oh yeah, I use it all. I used to think that you had to work hard to prove you're good at something, and now I'm of the age and of the experience of like, no, working smarter is the way you show you're good at something. You know, it's not making things harder for you.
No, in my last job, I'm still in contact with a couple of really good folk in my last job, and one of my peers used to work 12-hour days, and they were like, well, how do you have time to do anything? And I was like, because I don't do that, and I don't do that. I was like, well, if it's not getting measured, then I'm not going to get told off for it. And what gets measured gets done. So why would I spend 8 hours a day doing something that nobody cares about? That it's just soul destroying. Yeah. So I probably realistically worked about 20 hours a week. And but those 20 hours meant that I was the best salesman in the company.
Yeah.
So how I then spend my other 20 hours managing my life so I can be productive for 20 hours.
Yes.
That means something. While they're doing 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. and just
because there's this unwritten rule that you need to be seen at your desk and blah 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 blah. Yeah.
Well, and then when the question comes, we really like Richard because we can rely on him and he's really responsive. When we need something, he can find time to do it. Well, I find time to do it because I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
Well, I am doing stuff, but I've got more flexibility in my diary to do this other crap.
Yes.
Because I've worked here 10 years and I know which bits I can. Yeah. It's the difference between breaking the rules because you don't know the rules and flouting the rules because you know which rules are going to be enforced.
Yes.
It's like, I know I can do 75 in a 70 limit because the policeman isn't going to stop me. I'm not going to do 100 because he will.
Yeah.
Don't speed. It's bad.
Yes.
I know I can have a beer and drive home. I'm probably not going to have 12. I read a joke this last week that was like, all of you guys that told me to take the bus home from the pub because I was too inebriated to drive my car, apparently I wasn't sober enough to drive the bus too.
That's a sign of a wild party if you're doing that.
Just take the bus. And then the picture was this bus like in somebody's house. So like, okay. Maybe you should have called a taxi rather than tried to drive a bus. It's all really bad. So you've been diagnosed ADHD 6 years, and you've got ND kids. So which one of those diagnoses came first? Yeah.
My daughter came first. She was diagnosed in grade 2, so she was 8, which is unusual for a girl. But she had a very good teacher who knew that she just wasn't getting stuff and she wasn't learning well because of that. And she said, look, I think you should get a few things checked out. And then 18 months later, after I deep dived into ADHD and what it was and all that kind of stuff, and so many bells and everything went off in my head that I then sought a diagnosis. I was 45, I think, when I got it. And it was, the best day of my life. I mean, not marriage and children and blah, blah, blah. But from a mental health perspective and an understanding myself perspective, it was the best day of my life, because I now knew why I had felt different and on the outside for so long. And then around that time, my son got diagnosed with anxiety. And then last year or the year before, he came back with ADHD and autism diagnosis. And I know there's a lot we can say about labels and stuff. But for my daughter especially, because she knew she was different, she felt she was different, she knows that she struggles socially and all these other things. So now she knows why. And so for her, it was really important. For my son, he's a bit more, whatever, less concerned about it. But I think he'll get to the age, I think, when he starts high school and maybe notices a few more things, that he might find it useful to be able to look into it a bit more. And for me, it was just amazing. So so that's how we ended up with 3 neurodiverse people in a family of 4. It's mental.
I don't know if we're allowed to use that word, because we're trying to destigmatize mental health.
Oh, I know.
But how do we say?
The amount of times my kids tell me off for saying,
"Go on,
crazy house."
How do you use? Busy doesn't convey the same as manic.
Yeah, and okay, if you're going down that path, we can't say insane either, because that's
exactly
what it's like some
days.
Because
it's insane.
Yeah.
But
no, it's insane.
Sometimes the words that we use are the words that we use because they best fit the scenario, and maybe we should be less worried about that offending.
I'd love for us to be less worried about that. But I think, as you and I mentioned, we talked about earlier, that in Australia, to get any support, any funding, anything, you have to have an actual diagnosis and a label. Because the resources and the maturity in the schools to be able to recognise and respond to neurodiversity or neurodivergent children is just not there. So it's a very, very important part to getting your kids the support they need to be able to reach their potential.
Yeah. And for me, there's a big story or a big theme of people seeing excuses rather than reasons. My wife's not well. She's got a whole load of autoimmune stuff going on.
Yep.
And I'm not allowed to call her lazy because physiologically she can't do stuff.
Yes.
So I stay in bed during my holiday 20 minutes longer than her. And I'm told, get out of bed, lazy. How? One, I probably need more sleep than you do. 2, my inability to executively function isn't an excuse. It's a reason why I can't do stuff.
Yes.
So
See, that's why it's sorry, go on.
Well, if you can't because of label, and I can't because of label, how come you get to call me lazy but I don't get to call you lazy? That's
because we are human and we are imperfect.
The boot fits.
Oh yeah, and I'm sorry, but conversations between husband and wife are never logical or sound sometimes, and they're never fair. And
what's mine is yours, and what's yours is your own. Yes.
Yeah. But I think, I've had friends talk to me about labels and their kids and them not wanting to know and not wanting to stigmatize them and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if you can still seek the diagnosis, but you don't have to tell anyone if you don't want to, right? You don't have to, but it gives you something to focus on, and it gives you because the way you respond to autism is different to the way you would respond to ADHD, especially as a parent, right? So it gives you that power of being able to understand and respond to your kids better. But also, if you don't give them a label, someone else will. They're the lazy one. They're the one that just stares out the window. They're the one that's aggro all the time. They're the ones that throws chairs, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's, I don't know, personally for me, it's give them a label they can control and manage and do what they want with, rather than have other people give them labels that just kind of stick and are even more negative. I don't know. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
I didn't have anger problems. So there's a lot in this world of neurodiversity and thoughts and feelings and emotions and stuff. I see anger as a secondary emotion. You're angry because of another emotion. You're not.
Yes.
You're not just angry.
No.
So, you know, I had kids that needed to go to class early to settle in, because if they went in with everybody else, then they were just a nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, two of my kids had special treatment at the beginning of the day just to get them peacefully into a classroom.
Yeah.
Some of them were more boisterous than we might like. And socializing them has meant that they never collected a label. Both of them have got quite good friend groups. One of them has got a friend group that is predominantly neurodivergent. So at our secondary school, we've got a whole area for specific learning disabilities and neurodiversity.
See,
and
so few schools. Actually, I don't know of any schools that have that over here.
Yeah. Well, it's also a size of school thing. So our secondary school's got nearly 2,000 kids. So, you know, if your secondary school's only got 500, then it's harder, because then you've only got 60 kids that need help rather than 100. And, you know, all of their friends frequent this area because they feel safe in that area, because of how that area supports and provides for their needs. So I've been quite lucky that none of my kids have sought a diagnosis. None of my kids have been told they need one, and they've been able to get some level of support without needing one. You know, one of them has always been a handful. You know, they got to the terrible twos and now they're 60. And the youngest, you know, just before Christmas, we had a call from the school to go, "Oh, have you thought about getting them diagnosed?" So why would we want them diagnosed? You know, I've had my diagnosis over 2 years. And when I got my diagnosis, this same child was having challenges at the end of primary school. And we went in and spoke to the special educational needs coordinator. And the response was, you know, they're getting all the support we can give them. So there's no point them having a diagnosis, because the support we're giving them is the support they get.
Yes, but then what if they need support in other areas? And what do you know? What are you actually supporting?
Well,
are you just supporting for me, there's school, or
so for me, there's 2 points there. So the first is having that known association of behaviors and traits aligned with a label and supporting those, versus what I hope to see and what I'm trying to do in my ND consulting stuff is person-centered care and management. So if you look at somebody and say, here's all the challenges that you've got, here's some stuff that can help you with those challenges, great. It doesn't matter what label you have, because we're looking at it through the lens of traits and behaviors. We're not looking at it through the lens of ism
But sometimes you don't always know why certain behaviors are happening.
Yep.
Like
Yes.
with my son, for example, with his autism, he would be having masking at school completely. So they didn't think there was anything wrong with him. So he didn't need extra support. But he was masking and hiding all of the sensory issues that he would come home and have a physical outburst every single night.
Yeah.
So that physical outburst we worked out because of the diagnosis was because of sensory issues. And now we can manage those sensory issues because we know exactly what it is. The outbursts have reduced a bit. So I think if you're in a position where you can get by without a diagnosis, then great, you don't need it, and why pay for it? And if you're not seeking medication, we take medication. So, and that has been wonderful for all of us for different reasons and different levels, etc. So if you're not going down that path either, and you don't want medicinal support, then yeah, you're right. You don't need to seek one. You don't. And if you think and if your kids are getting by with the support from the school and the support at home, etc., then yeah, then you're right. You don't probably need to go down that path.
And I again, that might be a difference in how our education and health systems work. But our NHS actually covers quite a lot. So if I wanted to, I could have gone on the NHS waiting list for an NHS diagnosis and then joined the NHS waiting list for medication and then be paying.
And your wait lists are just amazing. That's one thing where you don't win. Your wait lists are wow.
Well, but you get what you pay for. So I've been on the NHS medication waiting list 2 years now, since my diagnosis October 2 years ago.
Yep.
And I know people who were diagnosed about the same time as me, who went through the NHS and got their medication 12 weeks after they joined the waiting list. Yep. So it is a postcode lottery when it comes to the NHS.
Yes, I remember postcode lotteries.
And how quickly that gets through. And they're focusing on young people because you can get the greatest impact with young people. And because of the rise that we've seen in neurodiversity being talked about in social media, we've also seen a lot of people wanting diagnoses. Then on the flip side, you've got this whole conversation of private, and you can pay decent money for a diagnosis. But even 2 years ago when I got mine, I still had to wait 6 weeks for a diagnosis. Yeah. From me going, hey, can I get a diagnosis, to me actually having a clinical assessment was 2 months.
Yeah.
And then it was nearly another month before I got my report. And if I'd wanted to titrate privately, I could have done that.
I've heard a few English people talk about titrate and titrating. What's
so basically at the beginning of your medication process, we need to establish the right dose for you. So titration is basically working out which dose works for you.
Oh, okay. So that's what we do over here. We just don't. Okay, call it that. Yeah. But yes. Okay. Cool.
It's a pharmacological term on how your body processes stuff. So that's why they use that term. Anyway. It wouldn't cost me anything to get the kids diagnosed. And when I got my diagnosis, and I was like, "Hey, should we diagnose these kids?" Well, they're all doing all right. Now, my youngest has always been behind at school, and the state used to do vision checks on all of the young people. So when I was little, it was at like 2. You'd go to a screening session at your local doctor's. They'd hold one every month, and then you get a bunch of kids together, and they'd hold up lollipop sticks with like little pictures on, and go, "Can you tell me what that is?" And it's a fire engine, top the build, or stuff that a 2-year-old can go, "I know what that looks like." Because not all 2-year-olds can do. But when my youngest was growing up, they moved it from 2 to primary school each. And then because of where the rota was, she actually didn't get hers until she was in year 1. So she'd done 2 years of preschool and a year of primary school before she actually got her eyes tested.
Right.
Well, why is she writing her B's and P's and D's and Q's backwards? Is that because she can't see the difference between a B and a D?
Yep.
Or is that dyslexia? So she got her eyes tested and she's required glasses since she was 6. Yeah, I found a photo literally just before Christmas because she's had her glasses 7 years now. That's quite funny. And she's been catching up with everybody else. So was she behind because she literally couldn't read because she couldn't see?
Yeah.
Or is there lots of other neurofunk going on that meant that she started behind and she may never catch up because of how her brain's wired? But the schools seem to be okay with it. She's not in this special area of the school for all kids that need that additional help. So I'm like, well, she's not that bad off, and that's part of the problem. Is that until stuff gets really bad, you're kind of left to your own devices. So you're not broken enough to need help.
Yes.
Well, maybe, but maybe if I got some help, then I would be, an Elon Musk rather than just a mundane person.
Yeah, you're getting by, so you're fine. But actually, what if I have more potential than that? Yeah.
And then that comes into a bigger political conversation of, I don't want to use the word socialism, but a more nanny state where people expect the government to help people. On BBC England News this morning, we were talking about unpaid carers. So family members caring for people, and having support removed from the government because people aren't deteriorating. Oh, here's £20,000 a year's worth of support. 5 years later, you haven't got any worse. You obviously don't need this support. No, we haven't got any worse because of that support.
This could be a whole other podcast if you choose this. But I'm just going to digress just slightly because I've got an amazing sunset right now. So hold on 1 second.
Oh, don't rub it in.
I don't know if you can see those colours enough.
The white balance has shot out, but I am a bit jelly. Especially because you are also enjoying a longer day because it's your summer. It got dark at like 2 yesterday because it was overcast. It was nighttime by 4. And I looked out the window.
I remember. I spent 7 years in the UK. I remember.
And I woke up this morning and it was dark.
It's always dark. It's always dark.
But right now it's 20 to 10, and here we go. Let me just turn this off. Okay. I've got another light on up there, but it's daylight.
No, I remember.
But how cool is your office? I went on a psychotherapy retreat in 2019, and I've got a folder of how to maintain your well-being. And I was like, the 10 pegs of well-being is being grounded in nature, having animals, eating well, sleeping well, resting well, exercising. There's something quite nice about looking out the window at that, at some trees and some grass in the sunset.
When we moved here 2.5 years, actually close to 3 years ago, we had just come out of our first major wave of COVID lockdowns, and Melbourne has the renown now for being the city that was locked down the most anywhere in the world.
Right.
So we were locked down for more days than anyone else in the world. And so we moved here, and then we had our second wave, and we went through another whole batch of lockdowns. If we hadn't been here, there was pros and cons because we didn't know many people, and the kids hadn't had time to meet new friends at school and all that kind of stuff before we got freaking locked down again. But if we didn't have the space and the land and the animals, it would not have been pretty. It would just, I think that's what kind of got us through that second patch, because and we just absolutely love it. It's just so good I know for my mental health and just for my distractions. Sometimes too distracting. I just look out the window and go, oh. And you forget
Squirrel!
you're on a call. Yeah. Well, yeah. My medication's worn off for the day. Who knows what I'm going to see out my window now?
and for clarity, that's prescribed legal
Yes.
prescriptions, and you're not on shrooms, seeing funky lights in the sunset.
No, because I don't know whether, I think it made the news in the UK of the mushroom deaths in a woman killed her parents-in-law and somebody else with a mushroom dish and blah, blah.
Yeah.
That's my town. So we don't talk about mushrooms in my town. We can edit that bit out. No, I am on prescribed medication to help me manage my ADHD, and it does a wonderful job. But as I say to my kids, pills don't teach skills, so you also have to put in a lot of effort and work yourself to learn to regulate your emotions and learn what works for you to kind of calm down, learn what helps you focus better, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
because the meds can help you focus, but they don't tell you what to focus on. Still.
Yeah, and as somebody who's unmedicated, although this last week I have imbibed in alcohol and caffeine at a level that I haven't for about 10 years.
Caffeine's a good one for if you got ADHD.
Well,
so
it's not when you've been caffeine free for 4 years.
Oh right, no.
Became Bleeding Gums Murphy this week. I was like, I do need to stop on the fizzy drinks. It's just not. It's not good for me. Yes. But I've got
between Christmas and New Year is never a good one.
I've got 18 cans of pop left, and I'm the only one who's going to drink. So I've got a choice. I either suck them up or I put them in the bin. But just last night I think I had six cans of Dr Pepper.
Oh God.
Two bottles of beer, a bottle of cider, and some mulled wine.
So you were also on a sugar high.
Maybe. And matchmakers. So Nestle make like Twiglets but of chocolate.
Yeah.
So mint ones are top tier. Then this year I've seen orange ones, which are like Terry's chocolate orange, but in a matchmaker. And then last night we tried the honeycombs, and for some reason it just smelt of like burnt coffee. So I think like the sugar in them, they weren't as tasty as I was hoping they were. So we demolished some of those as well. So yeah, I'm not as healthy as I could or should be. And then yesterday I also took this much off my beard. So now everyone's like, your face is round. I was like,
thanks.
This is the shortest I've had my beard for about 7 years. And I'm starting to regret it, but we'll worry about it. It'll grow. It'll be fine.
Well, that's the thing. It will grow and grow quickly.
Well, yeah, maybe not quick enough for the wife. You've got a pudgy face. I was like, I don't, thanks. That's not nice. Thriving with neurodiversity is really your vehicle to try and create neuro-inclusive workplaces for your kids' generation. And a bit
now, but yes. But I also in 2000 I did a postgrad at Melbourne University in positive psychology.
Right.
So basically, 30 odd years ago, a whole bunch of psychologists kind of got together and went, look, why do we have to keep fixing people who come to us broken. How about we stop helping them break first, type thing. So, and I learned about strengths theory, and there was quite a few different ones, but the strengths theory was the one that really resonated with me. So I've always had that, the medically driven narrative of ADHD and autism and dyslexia and disorders and deficits and all this kind of crap, right? It has a purpose to help you kind of learn and understand, but then you've got to flip it and get a bit more of a balance, right? So I work really strongly with my kids, and just anybody I talk to about this kind of stuff, is that there's always, everybody has strengths, even neurodivergent people who have been labeled with disorders and disabilities and whatever else for a lot of their lives. So now's the time to kind of focus on that, and especially a lot of the women I work with who get diagnosed in their mid-40s, like myself. By the time you're diagnosed, you've got no confidence left, your anxiety's skyrocketed, all of these, your self-worth is, you don't even know who you are sometimes. That was me. So learning about ADHD and how it impacted my life was really, really important. But then spending that time flipping that narrative and going, right, I know I'm really good at stuff as well. So focusing on your strengths, and neurodivergent people can bring unique strengths to a team. They can, there's business benefits and, business dollars behind having a neurodiverse workplace. But to have a neurodiverse workplace, you have to be accepting of neurodiversity, let people be themselves, provide psychological safety, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff, right? And we know that 67% of adults don't tell their workplaces, if they know they have a neurodiversity, they don't tell their workplaces because of stigma and discrimination, etc. So you're not getting the best out of that person. So to me, it's just common sense that they say numbers are now neurodivergent, 1 in 5 people are neurodivergent, right? Whether they're diagnosed or not. And unless you provide a workplace for them that is welcoming and inviting and they feel like they can be themselves, etc., you won't get the best out of them. They'll be hiding their true feelings, they'll be hiding and masking and all those things, which takes time and energy and is just a waste of human effort. Why not just accept that there's differences? Why not accept that they'll bring unique strengths? Yes, there will be challenges, but they'll bring unique strengths. And just, get the most out of all of your employees, and also workplace wellbeing. And the benefits are just, there's numerous benefits for just including neurodiversity in your diversity and inclusion work. It's just, there's so much research behind it now that to me it doesn't make sense not to talk about it and not to include it and, not to accept it. So that's what drives me.
And the other piece is that neurodiversity is the only diversity that interacts with every other diversity. If you labeled all of the difference,
intersectional,
yeah,
I think it's a word, yeah.
So that not everyone is, loves different people and is of different biology and is of,
different race,
other than age. So age and neurodiversity are the only two that cover everything.
Yes, but age only becomes an issue from my understanding, from older people, whereas neurodiversity is any age.
Well, so age discrimination in the UK. well, so my past 10 years has been in human-based behaviours, conflict management work, and a lot of that is in EA 2010, which is our Equalities Act, which replaced the Disability Discrimination Act, and a whole heap of other stuff. So there are 9 protected characteristics, including disability and age. So neurodivergence isn't covered unless you're disabled. And the definition of disability is something that has a long-term, more than 12 months, impact on your day-to-day activities.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the fact that I can't keep a job for more than 12 months probably has an impact on my day-to-day activities.
And possibly your mental health and your anxiety, or
if I can't get out of bed to go to work, it's probably impacting my dinners.
Yes.
So there are good reasons why you should discriminate on the basis of protected characteristics. Like, we don't want 8-year-olds working in factories.
Yes.
That's a perfectly legitimate discrimination. By the same token, we probably don't want 90-year-olds working in factories. Now, we have a state retirement age, but it is illegal for us to fire somebody on the basis of age. So we can't turn around and say, you're 90, you really shouldn't be doing this anymore. You're fired. What we are allowed to say is, under our health and safety policy, we don't think that people over the age of, if you don't have a driver's license, then you're not allowed to operate this machine.
Yeah.
And over 70 in the UK, you have to reapply for your driver's license, and then every 2 years have medicals and all kinds of other stuff to make sure you're fit to work. I think there's a line on when you can or can't discriminate, but the intersection between everybody is neurodiverse.
Yep.
And some people are disabled by their difference, and therefore could be, it's a political conversation again, afforded accommodations, adjustments to enable them to be productive members of society, or slightly more productive members of society, or not a complete drain on society. But the whole point of civilization is that we look after people who can't look after themselves. That's what civilization is.
Right.
So if somebody is marginalized and disabled because of their difference, it is incumbent on us as a civilized society to support them. And going back 300 years to the pre-industrial world, or should we be? So going back to low traffic neighborhoods, 15-minute cities, village life, if we've got a community of 200, then your 1 in 5 is 20 people. Okay, well, how do you interact with those 20 people in your community of 200? Well, we need a shopkeeper and we need somebody to stack the shelves. Okay, well, that's a relatively low risk activity that somebody could do. And that could be an 8-year-old boy, or that could be a neurodivergent individual, or that could be a 90-year-old man. It's not very taxing to take something out of a box of production.
I don't think you could put neurodivergent people in that group, because neurodiversity is not linked to intelligence.
I didn't say it was, but neither is being an 80-year-old or a 90-year-old. You've inferred that.
Oh, okay. So sorry, a neurodivergent person who is I'm with you.
What I'm saying is
you're using intersectionality. Yes.
There are some tasks that require lower cognition, irrespective of cognitive ability or neurodifference. That people who may struggle with executive dysfunction may be cognitively excellent, but still struggle with day-to-day tasks. So giving them something that is a low cognitive loading is also easier for them to manage because of.
Oh my God. If I'm giving an ADHD person a menial, not necessarily a menial, but a boring, repetitive task is like death by paper cuts.
Well, but it's the variety.
But inattentive, it's you're not going to get your dopamine from that activity.
So, I used to be a greengrocer. I quite enjoyed that job. It wasn't very well paid, but my job was to answer customer queries and make sure that whatever was in the back is out the front.
Yeah.
And if I've got something in the back that should be out the front, I need to fix that. And that was my job. So all I had to do.
Different. You're constantly moving.
But at the same time, it is the mundane. I need 2 more punnets of tomatoes. So I go out the back and I get 2 punnets of tomatoes and I come and I put them on the shelf. And then I realize that something else is missing. I go out the back and I find it and I bring it up.
Yeah.
So there is a monotonousy to it, but there's also structure. And there's also variance. And there's also other good stuff. So what I'm saying is that before we had nanny states going, here's loads of money, here's some drugs, here's all of this other stuff. Yeah, we've been humans in this form for millennia, but we've only had drugs for ADHD for 20 years, 50 years. So how did we interact with dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, ADHD 50 years ago? Okay, there's
We
a
didn't very
big
well.
so that,
We could,
there's a whole other conversation there about institutionalizing people.
yes.
And even now there are some tribes in the world that have a hut that women go into for a week every month because they don't want them interacting with the rest of the tribe during that week.
Yeah.
There is
Oh gosh,
some.
we're going to go off too many tangents here. I think we need to get back to.
Yeah, there is some.
I'm enjoying the topics, but there's so many topics here that we could spend an hour or more on.
But we're all out sideways. So for me, yeah, I'm not impacted by the ADHD medication shortage because I'm not medicated.
Yes.
And my view on medication is open to swaying, but my I've recently trained to be a coach. The coach who was training me to be a coach has recently been diagnosed ADHD, and her daughter is autistic and ADHD, and her daughter has just started medication. And we had an ethical conversation over the right and wrong times to medicate. Because her daughter is at her second or third year of university. She's still catching up on year one work because of mental ill health. Was that mental ill health? Was that executive dysfunction, meaning that she got behind because she wasn't held to standards and therefore didn't do anything? So lots of that conversation is like, well, what's your view on medication? Should we medicate or should we not? So part of me is like, well, for millennia we haven't had medication, so I should be just fine without it. Now, there's then that going back to that conversation we were having earlier of, well, getting by isn't thriving.
No.
So
I didn't have medication for 45 years, and 30 years of my life sucked. I had medication, the fog lifted. I went, shit, can people actually, this is how
function.
normal people function. And everything changed.
Yeah.
So I think what I say to people is, if they're in there, I don't know whether to take medication or blah, blah, blah. I just say, look, if you're not that against it, there's no harm in trying it. If it doesn't work for you, then you just don't take it. But at least you now know.
Yeah.
At least you now know what works for you and what doesn't. So that's, because it is a very personal choice. And especially when it comes to medicating children, because that, is really hard. That, oh my God, I'm medicating my child mentality. But we started with my daughter and medication. And 1 month later, we had a return visit to the pediatrician. And I said to her, she was 8 years old. I said to her, look, this is your opportunity. Think of a question or two you want to ask, etc. And I kind of left it at that. And her question was, can you give me something that lasts beyond midday? Because she was on small doses to make sure how it impacted her and how it worked with her. And she could tell the difference. She knew when it was wearing off, and she knew how she felt afterwards. So she actually asked for something that could help her for the full day rather than just the half day. And I'm just sitting there going, oh, thank God we did the right thing. Now it's different. Now she's 14. So now it's a lot more of, we have to make it her choice, of course. And we've never forced it, but when children are younger, you can, they listen to you a bit more. She now has to see the benefits for herself, of course, and she now has to understand why she's taking it and stuff. So she'll take it for a while, then for a day or two she'll go, no, I don't want to take it, and we go, yep, cool, all right. But then by the third day, usually she goes, yep, no, and she starts taking it again. And so she has to control that. And there might get a stage where she stops and whatever. And I always say to her that it's up to you. If you want to stop your medication, stop it, right? But you've got to learn the skills to manage your ADHD, because impacts your life, and it impacts how you interact with others. It impacts your emotional regulation. That's a big one with her, especially being a 14-year-old girl, because there's everything else as well. And so it's just like, fine, you don't want to take it, great. But what's your plan to help you still have a good day? You know, because if she doesn't take it, it usually ends up being a bad day. So it's all part of an education process, and it's, you know, it's personal choice and what works for you. And I will never stop taking it, but for my kids it will be their choice, and it is their choice. They have to see the benefit of it and understand why they're taking it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that's notwithstanding how different medications interact with humans. So you know, some of them are shorter lasting, and some of them require continuous dosage to keep things. So when you've got executive dysfunction and you forget your medication, it can then knock you out for a week, because you need to get back onto that treadmill.
To be fair, taking my medication, and I take short term, so I take it 3 times a day. I never forget, because I know when I haven't taken it. I know straight away if I've missed it, because all of a sudden I'm just like flustered and just like, what the. So for me, it's quite obvious. And my kids are on ones that you can stop any day type thing. So, you know, they've tried different ones and they've landed on the ones that work for them. And so
cool.
If anyone wants to rob our house, they would walk away with a good medicine cabinet.
We don't encourage
Teenagers
violence.
would be very happy.
Because they could really, really focus on the computer games.
Or just be like
a little bit wide.
Of medicinal speed.
Yeah. It's funny but depressing at the same time. The whole self-medication conversation. So my brother-in-law isn't diagnosed, but was once detained in a foreign country for 6 months after mixing speed and alcohol. Trying to break into a warehouse to get more beer, failing to obtain more beer because the door was locked, stealing a forklift, ram raiding 6 cars, and then being shot by police to stop him.
Oh God.
So it's quite funny when we're having this conversation of, I might end up getting prescribed something that has the potential, if overdosed, if mixed with all kinds of concoctions.
The interesting thing is, okay, so all the research shows that treating ADHD, and this is where most of my knowledge still is at the moment, still learning about autism, treating ADHD in whatever means, like some people do go down the natural route, whatever, but you've still got to work on treating it, right? Treating ADHD, even if you use medication, still puts you in a better place, statistically, keeping you out of jail, out of addictions, out of crime, especially if you have the hyperactive type, compared to unmanaged ADHD. I think one of the statistics is 1/4 of the male US prison population is unmanaged, untreated ADHD.
Yeah, I probably expect that to be high. So in the UK, the Clink and the ADHD Alliance and a couple of others have done some research, and 50% of prisoners have ADHD traits.
There you go. I don't know how old my stats are, but
well, and then my thought process. I said this in one of the other episodes. I think it was with a Canadian. Was it Julie? Anyway, why are there so many neurodivergent in Australia and America? Well, if 50% of prisoners have ADHD traits, and 200 years ago we had transportation as a punishment, then might you assume that half of the people that colonized these lands were neurodivergent?
Oh, my mind hasn't gone down that rabbit hole before.
Hi, I'm Richard. I feed all kinds of white rabbits.
Yeah, but the funny thing is with stimulants, though, which is why caffeine, a lot of, like before I was diagnosed, I used to drink a lot of caffeine, right?
Yeah.
And I thought it was because it was giving me the buzz that people talk about, etc. Actually, what it was doing is it was because caffeine is a stimulant as well, and this is quite common with some ADHD people. It was actually calming me down. So it was actually slowing my brain down to where it needed to be, which is the buzz and the hit that I got. That's why I enjoyed it so much. So I can actually, if my brain's going too fast just before I go to sleep, I actually have a cup of coffee just before I go to bed because it helps slow me down. And if I have too much caffeine in a day, it makes me sleepy. Same with stimulants.
I used to have that with alcohol, so I'd have like 8 pints and then just go to sleep because
8 pints put anyone to sleep. But I know what you mean. Alcohol makes me sleepy as well. Alcohol just like, I don't get it.
There was probably, I don't know, 5 or 8 years in my mid-teens where I don't remember seeing New Year's for literally 5 years in a row.
Right.
Because we'd have a party starting at 8, and by 10 I was asleep.
Yeah.
Now I may or may not be passed out drunk in a garden or wrapped around a toilet bowl, or but there's many times that I've woken up at 4 o'clock in the morning and I was like, Happy New Year.
Yeah. And everyone else is passed out by that stage.
Or 10 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah.
Just I don't miss those times.
No, God no.
But then,
yeah, self-medication does come into it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's quite scary how many people regulate with self-medication without being diagnosed.
And by self-medication, I mean the bad stuff like alcohol or other drugs or whatever, not prescribed drugs, but the other stuff. Yeah.
So Catherine, who's one of my first episodes, co-founder of the company I left last year, is she gave up smoking, but she's still addicted to nicotine. She'll eat like nicotine gum, like Tic Tacs.
Yeah.
She'll go. No, I'm not even joking.
No, but isn't that just as bad?
Well, so my dad had a heart attack last year, so he's now quit smoking, but he's on nicotine spray, and the doctor said as long as you're not smoking of it. So nicotine is okay. Smoking is bad. So he was like, well, I'm not smoking, I'm vaping. And I was like, you shouldn't really be doing that either. And then he had a heart attack. And it's just like,
I think that's a very fine line.
Well, so I was listening to Radio 4.
Yeah.
I don't know why I listened to this.
Are you sure you're not 50?
Well, actually, what it was it was a BBC Radio 1 news article using Radio 4 research.
Yep.
And what they found was that vaping is 99.9% safer than smoking. So actually, the distance between not smoking, vaping, and smoking is actually much broader than we thought. What we thought was, well, smoking and not smoking is here, and vaping's there. Well, actually, not smoking and smoking, vaping is here. So actually, vaping versus smoking is actually really, really good for you. But actually, then when you reset that for vaping versus non-vaping, it's still a massive gap. So actually, what we want is nobody vaping, because breathing anything in toxic is bad for you. That's why we have filters in our nose, and that's why we have snot and mucus and all kinds of stuff to stop us breathing in shit. And then, but if you're going to breathe something in, then that being water vapor is probably slightly healthier than all the other carcinogens in, cigarettes.
I'm not going to tell my kids that, but that does make a bit more sense.
But if you want them smoking, if they have to smoke, vape. So now you just need to find a CBD oil that doesn't create arsenic when you melt it, right? Because that's what was happening a couple of years ago. Is people put CBD oil in their vapes, And it was basically making all kinds of very noxious gases, and they were killing people.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, don't do that.
No.
Yeah, it's all a little bit much. How did we go? Oh yeah, so self-medicating.
Yes.
So we went out to dinner a couple of months ago, and she was panicked to find like two whole packs of gum. We were going out for 2 hours. I was like, you're going to be talking to me or eating. How are you going to have any other time to put?
Oh my goodness.
It's quite scary how addictive some of the self-medication can be. And she's been quite good at weaning herself off of caffeine. So she'll only have coffee before noon because she's impacted differently by caffeine. I once went out with her and she had a Diet Coke at like 8 o'clock in the evening and couldn't sleep. So I was like, okay, maybe you need to be off that. So it's a very interesting time where
it's never simple.
No.
Especially not this time of night. And I'm going to have to wrap us up soon because it's now 9:15 at night.
That's perfect. We've been going an hour on live. That's about as far as I get when I then ask the conversation of, is there anything that we haven't talked about tonight, today, this morning, that you wanted to talk about?
Excuse me. No, nothing I don't think we've talked about, but I would just want to say, like, just one thing when people ask me if they should seek a diagnosis for anything, right? Or, isn't everyone a little bit ADHD, blah, 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 blah. And I always just say that if you think you have something that is impacting your quality of life, then do something about it. If you think you have some ADHD traits and you're going along fine, then don't bother. But it comes down to quality of life and doing something about it, taking control and doing something about it. So, I mean, that's what I say. That's the guide I kind of give people that, because it might not be ADHD, it might be anxiety, or it might be depression, or it could be anything, right? Just start the conversation. Don't accept it as this is you, or this is your life, or this is how I am. Because you might be very well surprised that actually it's not. It's you plus a neurodivergent friend in your brain.
Yeah. And sometimes that anxiety or depression is ADHD, but your GP doesn't know what to look for. And sometimes you're depressed because your life sucks. Sometimes our life sucks.
And sometimes you're predisposed to it because it's in your family, or sometimes it's bipolar, or sometimes it's whatever. You don't know. So just start the conversation. And if you're not happy with the first person you chat to, and if you feel they're being too dismissive, or they're, you're a woman, it's hormones, go speak to somebody else, because the level of knowledge about all of these conditions within the medical field varies greatly. So choose your consultant wisely as well. Otherwise, it's too easy to be dismissed, and for you just to have that feeling of, all right, it's me, it's just me, and then you don't do anything again for another couple of years. So I guess they're the two things I want to finish with. Choose your consultant wisely, and if something is impacting your quality of life, start the conversation.
Have some personal agency.
Yes.
Fix it.
Yes. And don't necessarily get advice from your family, because they don't always know. That's a different conversation, so let's not start.
There is a whole conversation there.
Because they could be very similar to you, so of course they think nothing is wrong with you because they're the same.
Yeah. I raised you. I know what you're like. Yeah. But yeah, let's not get into
let's stop.
Hollyoaks neighbours home and away version of my life. I'll just my family put soap operas to shame. Anyway, it's been a lovely chat. I'm going to click pause here and then hang out with Amanda for another 10 minutes. Thanks very much.
Thank you.